Hi everyone and welcome to Truth Over News. One of the more oddly timed bills brought before Congress is the TikTok bill, which was ostensibly designed to remove control of the company and access to Americans' data from the CCP. On the face of things, the bill sounds great. Force the shutdown or sale of TikTok and take a huge social media platform out of the hands of the Chinese government. Who wouldn't be in favor of that? And it seemed like everyone in Congress across both sides of the aisle was in support of the bill. Representative Dan Crenshaw claimed that if you weren't in favor of the TikTok bill, you were doing the bidding of China, tweeting that voting against this bill is a vote for the Chinese Communist Party. The opponents of this bill aren't defending free speech, they're defending Chinese access to American data and American minds. Not a good look. But despite all the fervent rhetoric, we found more than a few things about this bill, along with its sudden timing, to be questionable. One of the biggest questions to be asked is, why now? Why, after years of TikTok growing in scope and scale, despite warnings of its effectiveness in targeting a younger demographic, does Congress suddenly find itself singularly focused on getting the company shut out of the U.S. market or sold to some large new U.S.-based investor? One would think that if the real goal was to protect the data of Americans, Congress would have acted long ago, before the CCP had years of access to the TikTok data that certain members of Congress have been claiming. And if Congress was truly concerned about protecting Americans' privacy and data, they would have acted immediately to stop data brokers from selling Americans' data to foreign countries. But for some reason that nobody seems willing to address honestly, now it is suddenly a crisis. The TikTok bill must be passed immediately, without question, in a presidential election year. There's also an even larger question at play. If the real intent of this bill is to reduce the CCP's effectiveness of spying on the U.S. and its citizens, why single out TikTok while ignoring far greater threats presented by China and the CCP? What about China's infiltration of our greatest universities and our highest level biolabs? What about their ownership of vast areas of U.S. farmland and their domination of the meat industry? What about the huge number of uncontested crossings at the border by Chinese nationals? What about tackling China's undisputed world role in their production of fentanyl, a deadly epidemic that is ravaging so many U.S. communities? If the premise for banning TikTok is really about preventing Chinese access to American data, why is Congress so totally unconcerned about Biden's shutdown of the China Initiative, a program that was specifically designed to counter domestic Chinese espionage? For that matter, what about China's role in literally every aspect of our economy and the concurrent supply chain threats that we face? There's another issue lurking as well. If Congress is so concerned about the privacy of Americans' data, why aren't they doing anything to prevent our own government from accessing our data and censoring online free speech? We already know that the U.S. government has been purchasing the data of its citizens on the open market, data that is obtained and used with little or no oversight. And we're all aware of the Biden administration's ongoing efforts to censor online speech that differs from official White House narratives and their widespread use of the so-called disinformation experts. In our opinion, the threat from our own government is a far more pressing concern than any threat from TikTok. And the big tech companies who would likely benefit from any forced transfer of TikTok are complicit partners in the government's censorship efforts. At this very moment, the federal government is challenging a lower court ruling in the Supreme Court, limiting their role in censoring the free speech of Americans. In response to a suit brought by the Attorney Generals of Missouri and Louisiana, District Court Judge Terry Doughty ruled that the Biden administration violated the First Amendment by censoring what it considered to be unfavorable views on social media, with the court calling the efforts by the Biden administration Orwellian and arguably the most massive attack against free speech in United States history. Examples included Twitter's government-directed censorship of the Hunter laptop story, Facebook's censorship of posts discussing the lab leak theory, widespread censorship of any who challenge the efficacy of masks and the so-called vaccine mandates. Which is why we find it odd that so many on the right who have been raising the issues of free speech are now actively pushing a bill that would potentially ban a favored social media outlet for millions of Americans, even if we don't like what many of them say on the platform. Rather than focus on TikTok, we believe that U.S. government control and domestic big tech censorship is the first discussion that should be had. All of which is why we've been arguing that this bill is really about control, or more precisely, the government's lack of control over content on TikTok and a burning desire to place it under their censorship umbrella, which helps to explain why the arguments for the TikTok bill are always generalized, always lacking in any real specifics. Alarmingly, one of the biggest proponents of the bill in Congress has been Representative Dan Crenshaw, who's refused to argue in good faith, preferring to accuse anyone not agreeing with him of being a tool of the Chinese Communist Party. Crenshaw's attacks on both Rand Paul and Thomas Massie are, in our eyes, quite telling, and our distrust of Crenshaw and his motives couldn't be deeper. We also find it notable that Crenshaw never said a word in defense of Parler, a U.S. social media company that was destroyed in similar fashion precisely because Parler wasn't ceding content control to the government.
And with access to your app that you're addicted to, you can vastly manipulate an entire population, which the Chinese have done already.
Are you worried that our intelligence agencies are doing the same thing domestically?
Am I worried that, I know that they're not.
They're not manipulating Americans? They're not controlling the flow of information?
Yeah, did you have some evidence otherwise that you'd like to share?
I mean,
okay.
Before the 20...
Any serious questions?
So ByteDance were to say
Congressman, you asked for an example of the U.S. intelligence agencies meddling in our information. What about before the 2020 election when 50 members came out and said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? Does that count?
No, because they were retired.
They were retired, but the FBI had the laptop for over a year.
There's nothing even close to what TikTok did.
In addition to our many concerns about the origin and true intent behind the TikTok bill, we also find some language within the bill problematic and troubling. As Representative Dan Bishop noted, the bill's definition of control includes 1, owners of a 20% stake in the operator, and 2, someone subject to the direction or control of the foreign government. Disturbingly, the person determining who falls under the direction or control of one of the specified foreign governments is the President of the United States. As Bishop sarcastically notes, of course the Biden administration would never abuse its authority, but what's to prevent a declaration that, say, Tucker Carlson is subject to the direction or control of Putin or Elon Musk? By the time somebody litigates their way out of that mess, they will be as hysterized as Parler. Bishop is right, although we would add Trump's stake in Truth Social to the list. Thomas Massie shares those same concerns.
This bill doesn't need to be 12 or 13 pages long if it was merely going to target TikTok. I'm concerned about the discretion it gives to the president. It's another set of boards that Hunter Biden can get on to make sure that the big guy doesn't put them on this list. And there's three things that could trigger getting on this list. Either your company is in one of those foreign adversary countries, or your company is owned 20% or more by one of those countries. Or number 3, the one that scares me, is the president gets to say, you're under control of a foreign adversary country. And just this week, Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin sent the chairman of the Oversight Committee a letter saying, we're concerned that X is allowing foreign terrorists and foreign adversaries to use the platform.
This language and the power that it provides is a major flaw in the bill, and one that seems specifically designed, made all the more telling by ongoing refusal from the bill's creators to take the language out. There's another section within this bill as well, one that seems small until one considers the larger implications of having the section included at all. On page 9 of the bill is an odd exclusion for any entity that operates a website, desktop application, mobile application, or augmented or immersive technology application whose primary purpose is to allow users to post product reviews, business reviews, or travel and information reviews. Proponents of the bill have assured us that this bill is so narrow that it would be all but impossible to target another company under the same law, which is precisely why we find this odd exclusionary section troubling. someone insisted on inserting this exclusion into the bill, precisely to ensure that a future designation by the president could not be applied to them. Thomas Massey agrees. Why do you suppose this was included in the bill? Why would this company or companies need a specific exclusion? We agree. We also find ourselves wondering why the bill happened to coincide with the completion of Trump's Truth Social transaction. One of the primary goals of the constant lawfare against Trump, aside from the obvious goal of placing him behind bars, was to cripple Trump financially. That aspiration ended, absent any impact from this bill, with the completion of the Truth Social merger. There's another strange aspect to this TikTok bill as well. Normally, you'll find loosely organized online opposition to whatever Congress is looking at passing. But the TikTok bill has been surrounded by a coordinated effort from online influencers to encourage the bill's passage. Some went so far as to produce videos, and another group hired an outside law firm to claim that the bill's language was limited only to TikTok. It was all very odd. But as it turns out, efforts behind the scenes have been quietly underway. According to the Wall Street Journal, it was slow going until October 7th. The attack that day in Israel by Hamas and the ensuing conflict in Gaza became a turning point in the push against TikTok. People who historically hadn't taken a position on TikTok became concerned with how Israel was portrayed in the videos and what they saw as an increase in anti-Semitic content posted to the app. The problem the promoters of the bill wanted to solve was largely one of demographics. Younger TikTok users whose views favored Palestine over Israel. Ultimately, the work of a data scientist on the youth issue was brought to the attention of Representative Mike Gallagher, who heads the Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. As the Journal notes, Gallagher and the committee's top Democrat, Representative Krishnamurthy, worked with Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco in the creation of this bill. And so it was that in very short order, the TikTok bill had sprung into being, created by the lobbyists and drafted by the House China Committee in conjunction with the real head of the DOJ, Lisa Monaco. It gets even stranger. According to the Journal, Monaco and other Biden administration officials helped with another problem. The House China Committee expected that even if the legislation passed Congress and the president signed it, TikTok would sue, arguing that it violated the First Amendment. So the committee teamed up with the Biden administration on how it could be written to best survive a legal challenge. At this same time, the Biden campaign joined TikTok by posting a video of the president talking football. According to the Journal, the postings helped give TikTok's U.S. executives confidence that the political winds against TikTok had settled. They were wrong. The TikTok bill was introduced and passed the House quickly. Gallagher, who ushered the bill through the House, had already announced his pending retirement from Congress on February 10th after refusing to vote for the impeachment of Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. But then, on March 22nd, a week after the TikTok bill passed the House, Gallagher suddenly announced that he would retire early, giving an effective date of April 19th, which is a huge problem because that date falls just outside of the April 9th deadline that would have allowed a special election to replace him. His seat will now remain vacant until November. It's impossible to see Gallagher's actions as anything other than intentional sabotage of an already slim GOP majority. Shortly after his shock announcement, Forbes reported that Gallagher was taking a position at Palantir, a firm with a tight relationship with the Department of Defense and one of the firms that had been pushing the TikTok bill, which now awaits a vote in the Senate. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Truth Over News.